Welcome everyone to another episode number 31 of the AI powered seller. I cannot believe it's been 31 episodes since we started this thing, but super excited for today's conversation. I know you've probably heard me talk about making your forecast bulletproof. If you want, you can go back. I did an episode on how to make your forecast bulletproof months ago. So we'll put a link in the show notes to that for you. But today we're going to go much deeper. This isn't just about optimizing your current process or adding some other, AI tool. It really is about rethinking the way that your revenue engine works. And today's guest is Chris Casula. Chris, I've known Chris for almost a year. He's a chief revenue officer at Benchmark Analytics. And in my opinion, and I love all my CRO brothers, and sisters. He is one of the more operationally minded CROs that I know in the business. Chris has led teams and sales ops at ReliaQuest, a whole bunch of other companies, Lavada, etc. And the theme throughout his career has been, how do I build repeatable systems? And he is going to share with us today what I'm so pumped for you all to listen to. Pipeline and forecast accuracy is a pain in the you-know-what. And what Chris is going to break us down with is really, how do I take care of this? How do I make sure that I can get there, but in a much easier, more efficient way? So you're going to want to make sure to listen to the end. There's some pearls of wisdom he drops just around, for reps and for leaders, what is this going to look like in the future? And let me tell you, the future is bright. I definitely think it's going to suck less. So without further ado, Chris, my friend, welcome to the show. I am pumped to have you for our conversation today.
AI-powered seller.
Chris, looking forward to the conversation. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to getting in and diving into some of the topics today.
Yeah, look, and I think this topic, we've got our audience is, people on the front line, leaders, up to, CEOs, private equity. And so I think today's topic around the concept of pipeline management and forecasting, right? Probably the bane. I think it's the bane of everybody's existence in the revenue org, right? Whether you're a frontline rep and it's why didn't you forecast? Or you're the VP of sales and you're the CEO and then the board, so let me, you've owned pipeline and forecasting, in leadership at various levels for years. What do you think is the biggest myth, maybe sales leaders have about forecast accuracy?
It is the bane of everyone's existence in the go-to-market revenue world. I would say the biggest myth is that reps can't forecast. I've managed to.
I love that.
Yeah, I've managed transactional teams where 80% of our business closes in the same month it was opened. I've managed teams where we're selling enterprise solutions to government. And so, the old joke about government, there's two speeds, right? It's slow and stop. And so forecasting is hard in both of those environments for totally different reasons. The truth is that it's not the rep's fault. We've created this world, Jake, where we have systems and process and incentives that allow things like sandbagging and inflation to exist. And really, we can't blame the reps for inaccurate forecasts because it's what we've trained them and paid them and structured them to do. The reality is, we can improve our forecasts by improving our process.
I think that's good insight, Chris. Let's get maybe can we get some examples here, right? So you think of, I'm a rep, my boss is coming to me, or maybe where does it come from? Where does this is maybe a better question. Where does it come from where a manager's well, of course a rep should know exactly when this deal is going to come in and exactly that Rachel went on vacation. Where do you think that comes from, this kind of expectation that people on the front lines should be, clairvoyant in some cases? And also, look, I know that part of this is well, there's the questions they can ask, blah, blah, blah. But where do you think this kind of expectation comes from?
Yeah, it's a really interesting corollary to that, Jake. And I think it's probably two pieces, right? One, as managers, right? We once sold and we thought we had all of the answers. By the way, we didn't have all the answers, right? And if you think you did, you're wrong. The other part is there's a lot of things that happen that we just aren't attuned to. As salespeople, we are really good at things like empathy and building relationships and critical thinking and problem solving. We're not really good at identifying data and combing through information and finding patterns. And so a lot of times those things, which might be signals or indicators, get lost because we just don't know what to look for inside of the broader opportunity, if that makes sense.
Again, where do you... Again, it's a good point, right? Most leaders, if you ask them how good at forecasting were you when you're a rep, say, I was good. right? I was pretty good. I knew how to do that. So where do you think they lose it? Like, where do they lose it in terms of, well, now that I'm a leader, I'm expecting this perfection? Like, where does that come from, for whether it's frontline or, even up to the top?
Yeah, it's interesting you say kind of up to the top, right? Because that, like, and a lot of what you're describing is just how sales teams use CRM systems, right? Like, I'll make a broad statement, and I'm pretty sure it's a safe one. All reps hate using CRMs, right? They just hate it.
Yes.
And they hate it because we've set it up in such a way that this is because my manager told me to. Because someday, right, like our senior leader might look at this and log in and check out my opportunity. And so you end up putting information in there for someone else and not for yourself.
That's
and
right.
There's kind of a disconnect in that process, right? I mean, one of the powers of starting to use some of these additional tools and setting up the right processes is that you can start to use the CRM for you as a sales rep, right? You can start to use things like pattern recognition and AI and call it custom GPTs, whatever you want to call it. But that can start to help you identify things like, hey, this particular deal has been sitting in between these two buying signals for such a long period of time. We're not saying the deal is bad. We're saying we need to dig in on this, right? Like, that's where that kind of human element comes in that managers really need to key in on, and not on, did you fill out medic, right? Because that's not the answer.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out. Let's talk about the CRM piece of that. That you were kind of starting to get into, is that like most reps see CRM is really like busy work and it takes them away from selling. Obviously, this is the AI powered seller. And I do feel like, I'll get into some examples of some other automations and things that we're doing, that we're going to enter a much more beautiful era that requires much less of this. How does AI change that relationship between data entry and deal execution?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that it can do that, right? I mean, even today, think about things like when I was frontline selling, if you would have told me that we can automatically take our video calls, our virtual calls, and automatically update the CRM with that information, I mean, that would have been mind-blowing to me when I was doing those calls. It would have been a total game changer. That's just like the tip of the iceberg, right? So you can get the data into the CRM automatically, so you don't have to go in and spend 30 minutes after every call keying in all your notes. It also gives you the opportunity to do things, like I said, that salespeople are just generally bad at, right? Can we start to identify things in influencers on deals, signals that say, hey, this deal is actually in a really good place and we need to do more of this one particular thing, or this deal might not be in a good place, even though it feels good. And so that's kind of that chasm. We're getting good data into our CRM systems. And then through these kind of AI-powered tools, we can get good insights, which will allow us to focus more. And that's really what it comes down to.
And do you feel like that's the difference between kind of top-performing teams right now, or teams that are, thinking about AI more effectively when it comes to like pipeline management and forecasting, is that they're like, leadership recognizing some of these pains and realizing AI is the answer?
Yeah, yes. And I would say, right, a lot of times top performing teams, they realize that AI is not a silver bullet, right? By the way, that doesn't exist. Right? Yeah. It is a tool, though, that we can use to get better about forecasting and processes in general. And so when we think about that, like it's wild, right? I mean, we talk about this, Jake. You might not need a manager in a deal review. That is what we think of as, like, that's our role as a sales manager.
Thing. I mean,
I do that.
My thing for 20 years of experience. Like,
yes, and I've done it this way 100 times, and I've closed 100 deals. And the reality is those deal reviews, you ask the same 5 to 10 questions in every deal review. That is not your secret sauce, right? That is something that can be automated. It's a process-based thing. And if we can do that, if we can bring in a custom GPT to help go through deal reviews, it allows your managers to really focus on the high-value things like coaching, high-impact coaching to move deals forward, to develop skills, to build relationships with the sales team and with the customers and prospects. It's a huge difference maker.
So what I love about this is, again, you're calling out some of the things that many people listening would view as the human parts a little bit, the feel of a deal, that feel of, I can sense Rachel's excited or Tommy's not. Now, the reality about feel is I could have 5 reps listen to the same call and I'd get 5 different feelings, in terms of, what that looks like. So let's maybe start at like the very beginning. Let's talk about pipeline management. Okay. And we'll kind of start from the beginning. We'll take it through the deal. Where do you feel like, in terms of like top of funnel forecasting, right? Like, where do you feel like AI can help marketing / BDR sales more effectively predict, where they're going to end up.
Yeah, it's a total facts versus feelings thing, right? And if you start at the top of the funnel, there's a lot of the, call it force multipliers. That's kind of a cliche buzzword, but it's true. It allows you to do more targeted information with people who are more likely to be interested in what you're doing. You can capture signals from all over the place. And when you start thinking about these things, like what matters versus what the data says matters, it's really fun. And usually early on in a sales process, you'll get a champion, right? And the champion says, yes, we want to do this. We're going to do this. And reps get happy ears because, as salespeople, we want to get to yes. And we're at yes. And this is great. And so what's wrong with that? But it goes back to exactly what you're talking about. It feels good, but does that actually have a material impact on where the deal is going to end up? You can run a lot of analytics and you can probably find out that raises more questions than answers, right? Can your champion even do this? Can the champion pay for this? Is there a budget allocated? I mean, is it even a real champion, right? And how have you tested that person? And all of those things might lead you to realize that what you thought felt good isn't actually an indicator for success on a deal.
So if you're somebody who's struggling to continue to use AI in forecasting, my hope is that this episode and all the episodes of AI Powered Seller, and we've done a bunch, are going to help you to get better and better about how to leverage AI with your team. Make sure if you are watching on YouTube, you make sure to like the video, share it in your Slack channel with your coworkers. Subscribe to the channel. If you're listening, make sure to hit the download button so you always get the latest episodes. I am doing my best to always try to bring you the tactical stuff. And that's what I'm really enjoying, Chris, with this conversation, is our ability to really deep dive into what people are doing around this topic and everything AI power related. So if we start with the top of the funnel piece of this, one of the things you mentioned is this more signals, right?
Yeah.
And so where AI can help is to better understand real signals. Do you have an example of that? How could a marketing or a BDR or an AE think about the again, being better at focusing their time to spend? What's a good tactical example?
Yeah, so many, by the way. One of the things I would, especially for this use case, right? Because there's a million prospects out there even for niche markets, right? Like there's a lot of ways that you can spend your time. And it is so easy to be busy, right? I mean, we can be scheduled 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and be really busy without actually doing anything. So one of the things we've actually found from a top of funnel perspective is that focus. The focus is hugely important. And so when we start doing things like account prioritization, right? Ranking at A's, B's, and C's or quantifying your ideal customer profile, whatever you want to call it, it's being able to help flesh out some of the more recent insights to the top. So part of what we do today is utilize news stories and positioning of our prospects, things that they've talked about in the public as indicators of whether or not they're going to be good prospects for us. When you think about trying to cover the whole country with your sales team, that's just impossible to do. You'll spend all day reading news and searching Google and doing all of those things. It's not a good use of your time. And so what we're starting to do is say, hey, here's an account that worked really well for us, that had something really positive. Go find me 10 other accounts that look just like this. And oh, by the way, once we found these 10 other accounts that look just like this, help us create some unique messaging that's still on brand with who we are and what we do. And
that's right.
Let's help build that outreach for those 10 specific accounts.
Yeah, and each company, what I love about this, and obviously I know Chris's business also pretty well and the work that they do. So, what this looks like in tactical application is, once a week or every couple of days, imagine AI agents that know the trigger signals for your type of product. And I'm not talking about these tools that talk about third-party intent. I really feel like that sector is going to get smoked personally, of like a marketing person from IBM read a white paper about a topic, as opposed to, hey, we know when a company is hiring this role. We know if this role leaves and changes jobs on LinkedIn. We know if there's a crisis in this thing. Every company, every software, every B2B company, there are those types of triggers that you have. Yeah. And if you really, really think about, what was the leading factor? It's like, oh, they just started a role. They were a previous user. That, to me, Chris, is the power of AI. And to your point, so it says, okay, here are the 3 people or 5 or 10, let's say a big company, let's say you got 10, here are the 15 people that took this type of action. And it says, based on the action they took, here's 3 follow-up emails for you to send them. That is doable right now, everybody. Doable literally right now. We're actually working with Chris and his company on some of this stuff, like as we speak. I think that the ability to say, you don't have to earn your stripes anymore. I think that's part of it, right, Chris? Like, it's part of it is my territory. I got handed 200 accounts, and I went through the rain and the snow and the mud, and I had to figure out which ones worked out. I feel like that mindset is still, and I think it's subconscious. I don't think any sales leaders out there or revenue saying, like, I want my team to be inefficient, but they know what made them successful. Right. And so we kind of have that tendency to run that play back, as opposed to say, hey, now my kid doesn't have to walk to the bus, in the snow with no shoes. I have shoes now. And maybe a car I can take him in, right? And so I think for a lot of people, for the top of the funnel in particular, a lot of this, I think, starts with a mindset shift, that there are new signals that you can track using AI agents that aren't fluffy. It's not like somebody visited a page about an article and you don't even know who that person is, that are actually really like hyper personalized to their business. And that to me is a beautiful thing.
We still have BDRs. Like, that doesn't, what you just described, Jake, doesn't take away the business development rep. Like, we still have them. The difference is, instead of going out to say, make 1,000 phone calls today, right? And just scour the web, right? Get the phone book. You can say, hey, here are the people that the message will resonate with. And by the way, it's this message, and go spend your time tailoring and making this relevant and personalized to the specific people who are great opportunities for you.
Yeah. And again, think about, for all of you, take time and really think about those types of things that happen that usually lead to deals. And if you're not tracking it, you need to start to track it, right? Or have AI help you to understand, or AI can look at the trends, potentially for you. So, okay, so we start to get into deal now. What do you feel, we can even get, specific, in your role at, ReliQuest. Like, what were the biggest gaps between what reps believed about their deals, versus what the data actually showed?
There's a lot of those. And that's the reality, right? Because we kind of talked about this idea of facts versus feelings a little bit already, Jake, where when I feel like something, when I hear something and I have happy ears, I'm a sales rep, right? Like, it's just natural for me to do that. There might be things that are lurking below the surface that we just don't recognize. So at ReliQuest, by the way, this happens everywhere. It's not unique to that, right? Long enterprise sales cycles, really complex things, a lot of data over the course of something like a year, right? And so in those cases, what we found actually is that there was this relatively infrequently used meeting that we had, and it was a specific type of meeting. It was kind of a mini proof of concept thing that we hosted at our headquarters. We found that every time we used that meeting, the deals were closing. And so we said, well, that's a really interesting finding. And it seems obvious in retrospect, but these kinds of things always do, right? But people, especially salespeople, right, of which I am one, we're bad at doing that pattern recognition. And so being able to utilize a tool to help us find those things, it's incredible. And so what we ended up doing is we ended up proactively incorporating that and suggesting that and pushing for those types of meetings. And we didn't close every deal, right? Like, there's no silver bullet, but it did meaningfully and move the needle for us. And so those types of things, identifying the things that should be obvious but aren't, like, that's a huge facts versus feelings thing.
So with that is a great one, and I love that example. I say this all the time to teams. This is more of sales advice. More meetings many times speeds deals up. And I almost have to fight sales leadership at times with this, that, one of the big reasons why deals might be stalling is you're not having that extra meeting. You're not instead of trying to do it in 2, you can do it in 3, but you actually drive the momentum faster. Then I think that, that's been pretty revolutionary for a lot of our clients of, like, if you can actually just add in something that's logically makes sense to get the right people there, et cetera, you can have a good, increase your likelihood to close. So it sounds like what you're saying is it's really just like taking a look at the sales process and, again, continuing, to orientate toward what produces the outcome that I'm looking for most consistently. And how do we reverse engineer that? And what could AI catch, like, for that example? Like, what would, let's say in a deal, so big picture, we catch that we need this meeting. What are some other signals that AI can catch when reps are in the deal that can help them with, pipeline forecast accuracy?
Yeah. So super specific examples, right? I mean, you might be in a deal and you might say, oh, well, we've multi-threaded into this deal. We've got 5 contacts at an executive level. AI might say, hey, look, none of those contacts are in the finance and legal team. And by this stage in deals that you've won, you need to have already engaged your finance and legal team. Right. It could be you talk about the more meetings, Jake. The idea of, oh, we just met with them, 10 days ago, 12 days ago. Well, at this stage of your pipeline, you should be meeting with them every 3 to 5 days. And that could be a miss that AI can help you recognize. AI can do, sentiment analysis of emails where you might, again, have the happy ears of, they said, yes, they're still doing it. The reality is they could be still evaluating alternatives. And so AI will help you kind of catch some of those really super tactical things that you might feel good about because, hey, we just met with them a week and a half ago.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing a lot of these tools have an engagement score almost where it's, you haven't emailed with them. And I think, who was it? Maybe Clary or some. I think Clary was maybe one of the first tools I saw that was like looking at, okay, how many people were on the meeting invite? How many people are you emailing with the deal and starting to kind of formulate that? But look, and to your point, based on where you're at in the deal, that could be interesting. It might not be interesting as well, too. And so I think that was kind of a V1 of some of this. And I think what you're calling out that most sales AI, the actual rev tech companies aren't doing that Gen AI is doing really well is all the other stuff. Hey, typically your deals have a CFO. That's John Henderson because I identified that's John.
Right.
He hasn't been involved. That's a problem. Or, hey, Jake, you actually did a great job. You just increase your likelihood because you got the CFO involved. Now, let's talk about politics. I just saw that they put a job posting up for this thing. Therefore, that equals this. And I think that's where a lot of the rev tech, I feel like today, is just so far behind that it's giving you these signals like, did Jake, did I meet with this person? Yes. Was an email exchange and it seemed positive? Yes. Okay. We've got, or let's go with MedPick. Jake asked he found out who the economic buyer was. Jake asked the question, he found out the paper process, right? But it's not understanding the nuances of the deal of like, did Jake actually run a good call? Like, was it good?
Well, and then kind of what you're talking about, it's like, yes, you check this box for MedPick. The reality, the CFO is John. You haven't engaged him yet. Here's who he is. Here's how you should reach out to him. Here's what might matter because they've just posted this new position. And being able to do that with, a click of a button or 2 clicks of a button, like that, it goes so far beyond what normally would have taken 2 hours of research and you're doing it in 2 clicks.
Yeah. And so what do you feel like, I think that's a good segue. Companies that are saying, yes, we're trying to use AI for better forecasting, better pipeline management. And so we started to try to use AI. What do you think the teams are doing that get it wrong, especially when it comes to, some of the different use cases, whether it's top of funnel, middle funnel, like we're getting into now?
We've used a lot of tools, right? I mean, we use Clary and we've got a lot of experience with that in different stages of the funnel. I think one of the things that I see teams that get it wrong, I would say there's 2 things. They try a shotgun approach. They try to do everything. And we talk about this, Jake, right? Like there's the art of the possible with AI. It can do so much and it can. However, if you try to boil the ocean, you're not going to get anywhere because there's just too many things. So pick one use case, start with that one use case, get it right, get it good. Like that's, I think, a key piece. The follow-on to that is if you've got your one use case, you have to make it part of your day-to-day or week-to-week process. And so you mentioned we're working with your team right now. And so part of what we do is every Friday morning, we have a team meeting and we say, how did you use Journey today to make your life easier? And some days I'll be, I'll be on with a rep or on with someone and say, oh, hey, bring this to the Friday meeting because it's a great thing for us to just reinforce and encourage. And then we get to build off of each other's ideas. The more that you've got your use case, the more that you use it and actually live it, the better, faster you're going to be. And then all of that are the possible can come secondary, right? Like what's the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and you build off of it.
Yeah. So it sounds like, and trust me, it's interesting. I'll play out some scenarios that we're seeing in real time. You've got the other, most clients I actually would say that we see are still in the complete Wild West. And that means either they know their team's using it, but they still don't have a centralized platform like Journey or something. That's one kind of group. Then the other, they've done that, but they really haven't thought through the best practices. It's like we've centralized it, etc. And then the ones that, what you're talking about is what we see the people that are really winning are the people that say, look, we're going to start to create this. And actually, this is something I said to one of our clients yesterday, and I thought that this actually captured maybe the chaos pretty well. This isn't like your RevOps roadmap, right? Your RevOps roadmap for a lot of companies is like, oh, we need to do this, build a this, and here's my report. Hey, I need a field. Most RevOps roadmaps, and people are like, that's not us. And I'm like, that's you, right? Is like, give me a requested thing, and I'm going to go solve that thing.
Yeah.
Compare that to a product roadmap. What a product roadmap does is say, hey, what's the problem the user is having? That's all I need from you. And then I'm going to translate that problem into the right AI, the kind of combo to solve your problem. And I think that is the gap. I think a lot of revenue leaders, that is what I think they're struggling with when it comes to just picking one or two use cases. Is they're like, but yeah, we could use clay tables for this. And then we could do custom It's like, stop. We're going to build a roadmap. And we're going to do this, and then we're going to deploy this. And then again, we've got a ticketing thing that fixed the bugs, because then ChatGPT releases a new model. And it's like, all of a sudden the prompts stop working as well. So I think for a lot of people out there, listen to what Chris said about how to get it right. Because if you want to get it right, you have to take this more structured approach, and it's okay. Sales leaders, I give you permission. It's okay to wait 2 weeks. 2 weeks to get something that does 5 things versus a point solution that somebody built and you think that that's good. That would be my high horse, Chris.
Yeah, I completely agree. I want everything yesterday, but it's okay to wait 2 weeks.
It is, and I think the good part is, revenue leaders are, we're all just kind of learning what AI is possible of. Their kids can possibly do, but we're all learning this together. And so if you were,
I was going to say, one of the fun things that we did when we started with this, Jake, is we went around a table with all of our sales team, and we said, what are you using AI for today outside of work? And the answers were really interesting. People were engaged. People were hungry for it. They just needed a little bit of structure to know how to incorporate it into our sales process.
All right. Chris has mentioned Journey a couple of times. Journey, my friends, is your little sales and revenue co-pilot. It already has all the best agents built out. It already knows your sales force. It knows insights. And instead of your team having to prompt, it already knows how to do deep company research. It's got a little button. It says keep deep company research. It says, tell me the link. And it goes. Outbound meeting co-pilot. Give me the link. And it goes. Digital SE is one we built for Chris's team. You tell it the problem and it gives you the answer. So if you're looking to get ahead, make sure to check out Journey AI, meetjourney.ai for your free trial. And I think that's also a good message for my leaders out there. Leaders, it's your job. Like we are in the middle. I don't have a good name for it. I'll call it the great retraining. But somebody back in 95 had to teach Brenda how to send an email. And someone at the company had to say, let me tell you why we're going to do it this way with the internet versus a phone book. And I think what most leaders still have not recognized, it is our job as leaders to retrain. And I will say for frontline people, it is your own. You got to take responsibility for yourself too, to learn the skills. But it's our responsibility to retrain an entire new way for these people to work. And if you as a leader aren't staying on top of this and starting to think about, okay, let me really understand that. Okay, let me really understand that. Okay, we should be doing that different. That feels different. And getting a little bit more hands-on keyboard with some of this, I feel like that's going to, if you fast forward 2 or 3 years, probably 2 or 3 years from now, I think you're going to start to see a pretty big gap of sales leaders that had been there and done it and worked at Salesforce and worked at Oracle and were like, making big salaries. And then you've got John, who might not be as experienced, but John just has a completely different skill set. And is able to scale the way that, the modern VC or PE is looking for, which is like, I'm scaling revenue consistently and I'm not trying to add headcount. I'm trying to add productivity, and efficiency to the GTM motion as a part of this. So if you were a first time, if you're a VP of sales and you're listening to this, and I said, I want to get better at forecasting accuracy with my team. And I'll limit you. You have to pick one thing. Okay. What's the first thing you would do? Like, what's the one place you would start? And I know, and you can give me your fast follow second or third. But if you had to pick one, what do you think it would be?
You're really pushing me on just pick one. So look, I think just start. We kind of already talked about that, so I'm going to take a side route, and I'll say, don't wait for this to be a company initiative. Just go do it. right? Start using it. If you wait for it to be a company initiative, Jake, you were just talking about this. Like, it's our job to be leaders, to get hands on keyboard, to be excited about this. You know what? Try something. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, okay, assess, learn from it, pivot, try it again. Yeah, you're going to, like, data quality matters and hygiene matters, which all of that is kind of like the fast follow, second, third. But the reality is, if you're not starting, if you're not just going to do it and you wait, you're going to get passed up exactly the way you were just talking about.
Yeah, and I think, this moral in that story for me is each of you as leaders and as reps, right? Because I want to be very clear. As you're a rep, you've got to also know your own bottlenecks in the process. Hey, what is stopping me? And guess what? AI is really good at this. You can give AI your last 10 calls and say, hey, why am I consistently not missing forecast? And it'll say, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. And you're like, okay, I can now start to do that. And I think the point you're making and just get started is each of you as leaders is probably going to have a bottleneck in your team that's causing this outcome. It could be, the deals that get forecasted. You brought this example up earlier. When the manager's involved, the manager's able to help the rep kind of round the edges and to say, let's actually forecast it here. Let's put it at this stage, etc. But they can't do that for all the deals. The example you mentioned is what I call 100% deal coverage. That I see a future where now me as a leader, because the reps are self-assessing more, I can actually talk to them about more deals whenever we do talk, because they actually come with a point of view. They're using AI to summarize it and say, hey, I think this is what I should do next. And so now I can talk to them about 30% of their pipeline. And then, I've got multiple people. So for the other 70%, they're getting my lens on it that would take it through the same rubric that I would, the Chris GPT, right, as a part of this. And I think that would be a good place for a lot of people to start. Chris was in a room that I was talking to back in July, I think it was, and we were talking to a big group of CROs, there's probably 20, and we were talking about deal review. I very specifically remember this, and there's a few sales leaders in there. Well, deal review, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, let's whiteboard this. I'm like, what goes into good deal review? And so, we start going, stakeholders, and then I was like, okay, what else? So we get this board. There's probably, I don't remember, 7 to 10 things.
Yeah.
I say, guys, all of you said the exact, very similar things. So do you think that if you could program something to do it, what you just said, that it could take care of a lot of the smaller deals? And I think it was kind of an epiphany for a lot of sales leaders and not in a negative way. Some of the things we might think are uber artistic and proprietary. The reality is there's patterns, to your point, there's patterns of how this happens and how, how you do deal inspection as a leader, how as a rep, you do your own deal inspection, and AI can help you. If you don't know what the pattern is, AI can help you. And so I think that's a good start.
Completely.
So let's, we've got a couple more questions here.
Yeah.
Forecasting accuracy and pipeline management. Where do you think we need to take it? Right. So if you think it's 2026, but, you're managing your team, and maybe you can, talk to experience too of how you're thinking about it for your team. What are the things that you care about? And are there things that I don't know if it's care about less, but maybe prioritize differently, as you think about the most important part for your team to be successful?
It's interesting. And I would say the biggest thing that we're trying to think differently about is pipeline coverage, right? There's this traditional notion that you've got to have 4x or 5x pipeline coverage. And quantity is super important and just go get more things in there. Well, it's not about volume, right? It's about visibility and confidence. And if you're doing all the things that we talked about, top of the funnel, identifying the people with the right signals that make good prospects, right? Capturing the right messaging for those people, getting in front of them with the right things. And again, doing it quickly, efficiently with some of these AI-based tools, working it through the process, noticing all of the signals that you might be missing along the way, right? With unique touch points. I would rather have 2 times pipeline coverage for deals that I have visibility into and confidence in and are really strong deals versus something that's we've got a 5x, 10x pipeline coverage. It's a totally different way to think about it for us.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, you have to think of how it's really when I got my MBA years ago, and I did it because I really didn't learn anything in undergrad. But one of the books, there's a logistics course. And there's an amazing book called The Goal. And if anybody knows, it's a fictional book about logistics. I've probably talked about it before. And you're like, wow, Jake, that sounds riveting. A fictional book about supply, like logistics. And the long and short of it is this: there's this like camp troop, and they load up. There's this kid who's not as in shape as everybody else, and he's got the same backpack on as everybody else, or he's overloaded. And so they can only move as fast as he can move, right? Mm-hmm. And so what it teaches you about supply, like logistics, is the theory of constraints. The whole book is to teach you this concept of the theory of constraints. And if you think about your pipeline, the sales pipeline is a pipeline that has constraints and drop-off points throughout it. And if you can start to think about what Chris said, which is instead of, hey, I'm just going to accept the constraints. I'm just going to accept this is our win rate. This is our win rate from stage 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, right, etc. And or just magically hope and wish that, well, if only the best of the best, the perfect things came in, we would get there. And you can start to get there, and so instead of saying, hey, we're going to try to, we have to be, I think 3x, I feel like, is the one that almost everybody says. It's like, well, where's the data on that? It's like, 3x. It's just 3x. How long does it take to ramp a salesperson? 3 to 6 months. It's like, okay, it's like, it really depends is the answer.
Yeah.
But the point is, I think for a lot of revenue leaders and sales reps too, I cannot stress this enough. You need to know your own numbers. We do a lot of workshops with folks. I was actually with the Angels last week in LA and just talking to the reps about, you can't get better as a rep if you don't know your constraints. I don't care what my boss says that the company's sales cycle is, or what my boss says that our close rate is. That doesn't apply to me. Yeah. My sales cycle is different. And that's the other part I love about AI is we're going to get personalized on this stuff. Like, your point, Chris, it's like, okay, Jake needs X. And if he can instead increase his throughput, take it out of Herbie's backpack and give it to somebody else at step 3, Jake actually can go down to 2.1 pipeline coverage. And so I think for a lot of leaders out there, you're probably not as far away from this data as you actually think, but I think you do have to start to think about pipeline coverage differently. Pipeline coverage is actually a leading indicator of sales process and effectiveness, right? I mean, that's how I would think about this, right?
Yeah,
as some
that's right.
Some flavor. I don't know if I've ever articulated it that way, but I think that feels like directionally right. So, okay, so I've got to look at it that way. What is, when you think about your team and you think about AI applications for this, again, it sounds like obviously pipeline, management, looking at the data, understanding, okay, hey, it's this point versus this point, and this is why it's this point, and why is Susan better at it than Ryan, and how do we duplicate Susan or parts of her process? Last question, where does this go from here? So we have this new world, and this new world is, okay, I've got dynamic numbers. I kind of know my forecast numbers for these different reps. I'm using AI to maybe the reps are self-assessing. They're able to do better pipeline and deal management. Where do you think we go from here? Most companies aren't here yet, but if you had to predict in 2026, where do you think the next unlock is?
Yeah, it's, there are kind of phases to this, right? And we've kind of gone through these. And by the way, we're not at the end at all, but we see things, you'll see things like the volatility of your forecast will go down, right? You'll see things like more deals, win rates will increase. Ultimately, you want to get to the place where you're, the hero for your CFO and your CEO and your board, where you have accurate forecasts and predictable revenue. That's not that far away. There was the old model where you just added more headcount and you could get there. We're going to get there in a much more efficient, effective manner where we're growing with predictable revenue and not adding headcount. You're taking your people and you're focusing them on what they're really good at, which is the critical thinking, the problem solving, building those relationships, strengthening deals, and not forcing them to do things like enter data into a CRM and comb through and try to find all the nuggets, because that's all things that we can automate. So I would say the future is getting to a place of predictable revenue efficiently and effectively, and being able to actually forecast accurately. It's not as far away as we think.
I love that. And I'll add that because you started with this, and not blame the reps, not say it's there, because we can build this system around that's just like, it is what it is. It's like, this has been taken care of. This has been like, we're able to kind of like insulate all the different parts of it to have the AI say, this is what it is. And based on these things, and And I think this is where, if you think about the dream of what was supposed to be RevOps, which was this kind of like process optimization org that really isn't that today. That's where I think we get to, though, is you can kind of more quickly identify the bottleneck that's causing forecast inaccuracy. And I think the key for me, Chris, is we can get to the individual level. And I think that is what's always been the difficult part is most leaders, and it's okay if you do this, it's all right. We manage people to the mean. We manage people to the mean of any of the numbers. Why is Jake better here? Ba, ba, ba. We have to, and every leader says this. Every leader says, I've got to manage to the individual, right? Every leader. No leader disagrees with that. Why don't we manage them to the individual on pipeline and forecast accuracy?
Yeah.
Why don't we? This is what Jake's thing is. This is what it is. And I think AI, Chris, is the unlock there.
Completely agree with that.
So Chris, my man, this was fun. I do a lot of these, and I think this was one of the most tactical and also the right balance of meeting people where they're at, but I think helping people see, okay, this is what's in front of me. This is the thing that I think I can do that. And maybe I can let some ego things go of I have to do this, or I need to add more headcount so people know I've managed 40 people, versus 20. And I think you've given some really good examples that I hope both, frontline reps and leaders listen to and, to steal from you, take action on, and pick kind of one thing from the conversation. So Chris, really appreciate you, my man. And thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. I've had a great time.
All right, my friends, that is a wrap on the episode number, what are we at? 31 of the AI powered seller. So thanks again, Chris. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you on the next one. There we go.
Awesome.
Oh, great episode. Man, I really enjoyed that. I was taking notes on some of the topics and really just thinking about the concept of forecasting. How many deals are you hoping to close, but deep down, they won't? How many deals are we hanging on to or, punishing our reps for because it didn't close, et cetera? And I think that's where AI steps in. And so I think what you hopefully saw here is that AI is going to help us not only be more effective and efficient, it's going to take away a lot of the busy work that led to actually a lack of accurate forecasting or, pipeline coverage. So make sure if you're somebody who is a regular listener, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for always tuning in. Make sure if you're new to the channel to subscribe, if you're watching on YouTube or download it on your favorite podcast platform. And I'll leave you with this. The difference between teams hitting 85% and 120% of quota isn't effort, it's predictability. They're looking at the different parts of their revenue engine and saying, how do I increase X, this part, to increase predictability? So that's what I got, everyone. Appreciate you, as always. Thanks for tuning in to another episode, and I'll see you on the next one.